Now you're welcome back. Nathan Murphy will be on commentary of Spurs Arsenal in about an hour's time. Afternoon.
How's it going?
Very well. I've just seen David Clarke, 37 years of age, make a brilliant save at Croker, and the resultant 45 has gone wide, a point apiece after 6 minutes. We were just saying you've taken on the commentary of Spurs Arsenal. You're obviously confident Mayo will have this wrapped up by around 4:30.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Saving myself for the big day.
Absolutely.
Like Andy Moore, semi-finals are just there for winning. The big performances for the big day.
Correct. Semi-finals there for winning. All-Ireland finals are there for
enjoying somehow afterwards.
Gotta enjoy the build-up.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter Alice.
Very sad.
Yeah, what a man.
Which I must go. We must play out over the next few days. Actually, when we were up in, I think it was up in Port Stewart for the Irish Open. He was over. Peter's son Simon runs the Irish Open and has run the Irish Open for the last few years. Peter was over. 3-4 years ago now, and he spent about 20 minutes, half an hour in the little studio we had up there, and it was brilliant. It didn't even matter what he was saying. You're just listening to the voice.
Yeah. I saw John Cleese with a tweet, and it was a great line this morning. He said, "I could handle the end of the world once Peter Alice was commentating." True. I think you kind of could. So Spurs Arsenal, I mean, a tale of two areas within North London. That's not the catchiest way of putting it, but
no, I was wondering where you're going with that.
That was not Peter Alice-esque. Spurs going very, very well. Arsenal kind of wondering where is this going?
Yeah, it's been absolutely stunning stuff from Tottenham from that opening day of the season defeat against Everton. They're unbeaten in 9. And they've been able to do it against the big guns as well. We've seen it in recent weeks, beating Manchester City in a totally different game to when they beat them last year. This wasn't a smash and grab. It was a composed, well thought out Jose Mourinho performance. Chelsea last week, all right, it was a sort of more old school Mourinho of they bored us all to death. But it was another point that meant they didn't lose any ground in anyone. And they start today, 21 points, level with Liverpool, not a win here. They go back on top of the league and coming into this game as strong favourites. They have it all. They have that base now that Mourinho wants. Starting to get a bit of a settled 11 for these league games, despite the fact of so many matches. And also just the sheer class then of Son and Kane, which gives them that X factor. And a lot of talent on the bench as well. So I think Spurs are going to go far this season. They have enough to sustain it after Christmas. I'm not quite sure. They'll have to do something they've never done before. But this couldn't have gone any better to start the season for Mourinho. And for Arsenal, it's all sort of fallen apart over the last few weeks. And you did worry that the same old Arsenal would eventually emerge all over again. And the most frustrating part for the Arsenal supporters, I'm sure, it's just been very dull. There's just nothing when you're watching them. There's so little creativity. Aubameyang has had a massive dip since the start of the season. And when you're looking at Arsenal, you always thought, well, if Aubameyang plays, they're going to score. And he is going to be the player who'll score the vast majority of the goals. He's not even looking like scoring. Yeah. And again, plenty of changes today. They look an unsettled side, 13 points from 10 games. They start this match 15th in the table. So you've got to be pretty worried. It's a big North London derby. And if Spurs can win this, well, it's going to set them up brilliantly heading into as busy a December as you could imagine. Just on the team news for Tottenham, a couple of changes from that Chelsea game. Obviously, they played in midweek against Lask, but a huge amount of changes from Thursday night. But from last weekend, Toby Alderweireld is back fit, so he replaces Joe Rodon at the back. Big blow, and I didn't think we'd be saying this at the start of the season. Tanya Ndombele isn't in the squad, so Giovanni Lo Celso will replace him. So the Spurs side, Hugo Lloris captains the team. He passed the late fitness test to start in goals. Back four of Aurier, Alderweireld, Dyer and Reguilon. In midfield, it'll be Højbjerg and Sissoko with Lo Celso just in front, and then Bergwijn and Son either side of Harry Kane. Gareth Bale is among the substitutes, but no place for Matt Doherty on the Spurs bench this afternoon. He was criticised again for his performance on Thursday night and doesn't make the matchday squad today for Tottenham. And for Arsenal, Bernd Leno in goals. They're back four. Hector Bellerin, Rob Holding, Gabriel and Kieran Tierney. Thomas Partey is back. We've seen flashes of him, and when he has played, he's been very impressive. So he's back today, starts straight back into the side alongside Granit Xhaka in the middle of midfield. Saka, Willian, Lacazette and Aubameyang makes up the rest of the Arsenal starting 11. Yeah,
it really is amazing how it's all turned around for Spurs. I mean, pre-lockdown, Kane was injured, Son was injured, Sissoko was injured. And I don't know if you've watched that All or Nothing doc on Amazon. I've been watching it, you know. Ndombele, who is out today, unfortunately, but I mean, he was having almost a crisis meeting with Daniel Levy because he was so miserable off the field and couldn't settle. And now here we are. It's been an amazing turnaround. Nathan, I'll be back with you post 4 o'clock. You can stay listening though, because Andy Moran at Croke Park, we're having goals. What's going on here?
Joe, it's nuts. Let me settle myself. 1-2 to Mayo, 1-1 to Tipperary. Fox is just after scoring a goal. Like, if you could write this for Tipperary, Quinlivan gets a chance 1-1. Clark makes a brilliant save. I heard you saying it to Nathan. Quinlivan is out on the right hand side. He swings one across to Sweeney. Sweeney has a chance. Clark makes another brilliant save. Mayo go up the pitch, and Killian O'Connor gets a goal from Tommy Conroy, putting it across the field. But straight up the other end of the field, then Fox, the smallest man on the field, must run 30 yards at the ball, twisting, turning, and slides one in by Clark. And the game is just wide open, Joe.
Yeah.
I cannot believe it. Tipperary went man to man. Fox is pushing up on Paddy Durkin. Chris Barrett is in 40 yards of space here on Sweeney. Do you know, it's nuts. Sorry, now I need to come back to you.
No, you've made perfect sense. The worry for Mayo is that Tipperary could easily have had 3 goals.
They've 3 goal chances here wrapped up, and the only time Mayo created the goal chances when Aidan O'Shea does a great turnover at the top of the D, gets it through to Tommy Conroy, and Killian is at the back post, nice little tap in. But just on it, Mayo, the first 2 kickouts, not pushing up now. Tipperary are pushing right up on the kick-out. The wing-backs are 20 yards ahead of the wing-forwards. I don't know if they'll continue to do it, but that's what they did for the first 2 or 3 kick-outs. Caught me by surprise. I'm sure it caught Mayo by surprise, so it's going to be interesting. So basically everything I said to you in the pre-match, Joe, wipe it out. We've a new game here. It's 1-2 to Mayo, and it's 1-1 to Tip.
Good. 20 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. Andy Moran at Croke Park.
Thank God we talked about Dublin.
Yeah. OK, 12 minutes gone. I suspect we'll be over to Andy regularly. Mayo 1-2, Tipperary 1-1. But as Andy said, there's a wildness about this game, even in front of me now. Possession is changing hands every almost, it feels like, few phases. In fact, Tipperary almost spilled it there and gave Mayo a brilliant goal chance. But unlike Dublin, going through calm, controlled passing last night, this is just wild. So Mayo 1-2, Tip 1-1. Tip could easily have had another 2 goals, easily. Andy Dunne, afternoon.
Afternoon, Joe.
So Ireland 31, Scotland 16. That calms everything down a little bit for Andy Farrell and everybody as they head off for their Christmas.
It does. I'm sure they were, overall, I'd say they were delighted with the results yesterday.
And the performance?
I think 15 minutes either side of the half time, I would say, was the best 20 to 30 minute period they've put together in 2020 and under Farrell. So yeah, I'd say overall they would have been positive about the performance too, yeah.
And what was good about those 20 minutes?
Well, I tell you what I felt was that there was some creativity. There were signs that they were going to be attack-minded, but not attack-minded from the similar or previous templates of attack that they'd used. I mean, an example might be, I'm still quite critical of the box kicking from deep within our own half. There's nothing wrong with a box kick in the opposition 22 or opposition half, and seeing that small little change, we hit a ball up from a line out into midfield, and it was preordained that Murray would launch a box kick. But it's launching a box kick in an area where if you're going to give up possession and win it back again, you're at least in the opposition 22. And I think from that, we Henshaw retained possession. We spun it out to the left, and we had a brilliant chance. O'Mahony did a grubber kick for Earls, and it was one of the only things O'Mahony did that he didn't execute brilliantly. He grubber kicked. The execution was wrong, but it would have been a clear run-in try for Earls. And it was very different in that it wasn't exhaustive. It wasn't blunt force trauma, 25 phases in a row. It was a different way to watch us create. It was a snapshot, and it probably best represented that 20-minute period. There were other moments within the game where I just saw a discernible change in our attacking approach.
One of the criticisms from the Georgia game was that Ireland were ignoring very blatant overlaps, sometimes 4v2 type overlaps. You take Keith Earls' try on the 50th minute, Henshaw to O'Mahony to Earls. That was ruthlessly taken chance, which is good, and it's something you want Ireland to do. I mean, the start of the second half, there is a physical advantage to Ireland against Scotland in the main, not total, but it's not like the England situation. and Ireland went through a number of quick phases. The scrum was fixed, and then they ran at aggression with Scotland. Caelan Doris made a big carry, and then Cian Healy went over for his try. Suddenly it's 18-9, and then the Earls' second try makes it 25-9. But, you know, in those moments, there was great intent about the side then. I mean, it's not tries from the end of the world. It's not necessarily flowing rugby, but it's, you know, maybe it's a sign of where our expectations are a little bit for the team now. But it was good, you know, basics done very well in that speed rugby.
Yeah. We've probably all been starved of invention, and you know, the team have very adequately demonstrated that they're able to retain possession in the opposition 22, and they're able to score against weaker sides using that tack. But that approach certainly doesn't work against England, and unlikely to work against physically more dominant sides. So it's all well and good to beat a Georgia or an underperforming Wales or an average Scotland side. Had we beaten Scotland and not showed any creative intent, I think I would have been a little depressed. But I was quite the opposite. I was very enthused. You mentioned that score, that 3-on-2 overlap. Again, it was really nice to see O'Mahony handle that well. And in the first half, we saw a very similar situation created, and Bundy Aki was unable to get that ball away. And you see a number 7 is able to do it, and a midfielder who isn't. That was something that concerned me, and I think it's a trend I've seen in Bundy Aki. He's a brilliant runner. He's very physically combative. He's a good physical defender in terms of the aggression he brings into the tackle, and he's very capable of an offload. But his actual distribution, he had more time than it looked, and he needs to be able to get that ball away better in the first half. And they're little things that we need to see changes in. If we're going to be a more creative team, you need your midfield to be able to do that seamlessly. And O'Mahony, in a sense, showed his skill, but also showed where maybe there are issues in the midfield in terms of distribution. O'Mahony's pass was brilliantly executed to Earls on the run. Yeah. He kind of caught it and released it in a split second, all in one motion, which you'd hope for from an international midfield player like Aki, but it's not something that is the strength of his. So, you know, there are obvious positives to yesterday, and then there's little observations where I think that, you know, we need to improve. Yeah.
Aki's distribution is, you know, his passing. I'm not talking about offloads because he can do an offload.
Yes.
But his passing has never been amazing. You know, it's not like it's always eye-catchingly bad, but it might be, you know, inside shoulder as opposed to out in front of a guy, or just not be totally on the money in a way which mightn't destroy an attack, but it doesn't always enhance it either.
Yeah, I think it's a concern because at the highest level, you need people who can perform those skills with their eyes closed. You know, they've got to be able to execute. If you're talking about a lot of the chat coming from the Irish camp in the last couple of weeks, and it was very much, they were defending themselves. They're saying we're creating chances. It's just a matter of executing. And if you want to execute against good sides in pressure situations, those simple little technicalities are exactly where you need to work on. So something like when you see a midfield, now we don't have Ringrose, he's injured, but when you see Henshaw, Aki, and then McCluskey and Farrell as midfielders there, probably none of the four are renowned for their distribution skills. Of the four, I think Henshaw is probably the best passer, but you're probably looking at four players who are good defenders, very physical, all can offload pretty well, all can compete in the air well for kick chase and things like that. But distribution-wise, someone like Ringrose adds more nuance and style to our midfield. So he is missed.
Yeah, for sure. 30 minutes in, this was looking shaky. I mean, there was a fear, is this going to become more ragged for Ireland a la the Georgia game and almost disintegrate before our eyes, and really we'd find ourselves at a kind of crisis point. To the team's credit, they regathered themselves and beat a team they should be beating. So that's a good sign. But that first 30 minutes, I know Ireland were on top the opening 10, but but there was a period, be it like a Keane Healy forward pass or Jacob Stockdale fumbling a catch, which he just really, you know, there's a point where those errors stop being, oh, he should have caught that. Well, that's just what he does. You know, if you keep doing it, it's not just oh, well, look, he's obviously a better player than missing that. But, you know, that kind of stuff was happening. And then, you know, moments like there was a brilliant Conor Murray box kick, made brilliant by Robbie Henshaw taking it, and then nobody there at the breakdown. And, you know, and
yeah.
Murray wasn't there quick enough, but nobody stepped in, and there was a real sense of, God, where's the detail, even in the boring aspects that we've, you know, almost talked about with derision. And yeah, but Scotland weren't brilliant either. They were having knock-ons, and they, you know, it wasn't like they were tearing Ireland apart. But that opening 30 minutes, allowing for the 10 minutes initially when Ireland were sort of on top, that was worrying. That was like, geez, I don't know what you thought. You kind of always felt Ireland would win, but that you were starting to question it for sure.
Well, I think it demonstrated that we've got. I think that sometimes we're critical of the team being very, very kind of, say, an older team or an aging team, but the experience, I thought, shone through from the likes of Healy, from O'Mahony, from Murray and Sexton, in that they rescued what was looking like a really poor performance. There was a 15-minute lull. There was poor technical execution throughout. There were that mistake you highlighted correctly was the excellent box kick and kick chase by Henshaw, and then nobody within an arse's roar of the ruck, and suddenly it looked really a good piece of play made look awful very, very quickly. So what I think you saw was a command among that group, or certainly among the experienced players, that they can brush off a mistake well. And I think that comes with experience. With lack of experience, mistakes eat into a player. On an international game where there's a crowd present as well, the players can carry mistakes like that, and you can hear it became one of those days where nothing worked for us. But we were able to just arrest and halt that decline. And again, that I think that was very much led by that leadership group on the field, O'Mahony, Sexton, Murray, who, for me, I think had one of their better games in the last 2 years, maybe together. O'Mahony in particular, if reminded me of a slightly less stylish kind of Olivier Magne, you know, who would have been playing around the time, you know, the early 2000s. But if we saw a French open side, grubber kick, you know, catch and pass and set up a 3-on-2, a brilliant finish, you know, only denied by his big toe on the touchline. If we saw a French open side do that in a game, we'd wax lyrical. So I think credit where it's due. He certainly had quieter games for Ireland in the last 2 years. I think Murray's had games where he still does exhaustively use the deep box kick, and I'd love to see it eradicated, but at least he used the box kick in the opposition 22, which I think is novel and creative. And then you saw Sexton's crossfield, kind of little crossfield chip kick back for Henshaw and Earls again. I think that showed signs of Mike Catt's influence.
Right.
So just some creative thinking that was desperately needed. I think whether the nation needed it, I certainly needed it, because I need that to see a team show some sense of creativity in order to get behind them, and that happened.
Yeah, well, geez, we're at a point in rugby where having the ball seems to be a liability, so that's a wider discussion we must have with you very, very soon. There were a few pieces in the papers today to that effect. So to round this off then and get a sense where we are as we emerge from autumn, just very briefly, if you could, to even a minute, Andy, France, England, South Africa, New Zealand, they're the top table. Johnny Sexton himself admitted that we're not at that top table and we're somewhere ahead of the rest then. That's about where we are at the end of 2020.
Yeah, I'd say that's exactly where we are. If you want me to round it up in 10 seconds. We're probably sixth. We're just behind those five. But the positive side is I think there's been, Farrell's been brave in his selection policy. He's been brave in the recent weeks in terms of trying to introduce some new style of play, and that takes time to bed in. So overall, positive.
Okay, Andy, we'll talk to you in a bit more depth in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure. Thanks very much. Mayo 1-7, Tip 1-3.